Hi and welcome to another tutorial from basegame.co.uk. Today we're in Unity and we're spawning enemies using the animator, and we've got a timeline preview like you might have in a tower defense game. So let's get started with it. Let's open Unity Hub. And we'll make a new 2D Unity project. Spawning tutorial. Okay, so let's choose where we're going to put it. We'll make a new folder to put it in. Spawn tut. Select the folder and press create. Now we're going to fast forward a bit. Okay, so now we're in Unity. We can get started by making 3 folders. I'm going to call them scripts, sprites and prefabs. Scripts, sprites, and prefabs. Okay, so let's open the script folder and import some scripts. Where are we here? Select the 4 scripts here. And the sprites will import the background and the 6 sprites here. Now you can get these files from the link in the description if you wish, or you can make your own. Okay, let's check. They're all Sprite 2D and UI up here in the texture type, which they are. So moving on, we're going to create a canvas as a child of the main camera. We're going to change the setting to screen space camera, drag and drop the main camera into here, change the plane distance to 0.5 so it's directly in front of the camera, nothing renders in front of it. And we're going to scale the screen size of the screen, roughly 1200 by 900, and match the width and the height equally by typing 0.5 in there. So that's the canvas setup. Now we're going to drag and drop the background onto the canvas. It's just a simple background for the case of this tutorial. Next we want a black background for our timeline. So we'll just make a UI image, change the colour in the inspector to black, and then I'm just going to move it over here like this, scale her up a bit like that. Right, so then we've got our timeline. Just going to rename that to timeline background. Okay, so now we're going to set up a few points for things to happen. So we're going to have an enemy spawn position here, an icon spawn position, a position for when the icon has arrived, and destroy the enemies so the enemies don't travel on forever. Okay, so let's create an empty game object. Press W, move it up to here, and we're going to name that enemy spawn position. Enemy spawn pos will do. Now we're going to duplicate that, move it on top of here, and this is where our icons are going to spawn, so we're going to rename it to icon spawn position. And duplicate that and move it down to about here, and this is our icon arrived position, icon arrived pos, and then we want the destroy the enemy position here, so duplicate it once more, move it to here, I'm just going to destroy enemies. Okay, so we'll attach a box collider 2D to this. Box collider 2D. change the size of it, usually 100 by 100, and then we're just going to press R, scale her out like that. Back to the icon arrived position, we can do the same thing, box collider 2D, but we're going to make it a trigger this time, and make sure that the collider is the right size. Okay, and that's that. Now we can make our prefabs for our icons and our enemies. So let's turn off the background so it doesn't get in the way of what we see. And we're going to create an empty game object and call it enemy01. Enemy01. And I'm just going to reset the transform position and drag and drop the enemy sprite on top. That's all good. Let's change the ordering layer to 1 so it renders on top of the timeline background. And then we'll move, press W, move it over here, scale it down a bit to the size. Oh, hang on a minute. This is our enemy, not our icon, so we're not doing that. Right, so let's add a box collider 2D and a rigid body 2D, and I'm going to change the gravity to 0 and the drag to 0 because I don't want them speeding up as they move down the screen. I'm just going to scale them down a little bit more. Okay, so then I'm just going to duplicate twice, move them over a bit so we can see what's going on. Rename them. Enemy 1, Enemy 2, Enemy 3. And I'm going to switch out the sprites for the correct sprites. Then I'm going to put them in the prefab folder. And I'm going to delete them from the hierarchy. Okay, now the icons. So another empty. Call it icon 01. Drag the enemy 1 icon in there. Change the ordering layer. Go back to here. Add box collider 2D like before. Rigid body 2D like before. Do the same with the gravity and the drag, but we're going to make this box collider 2D a trigger so they don't bump into each other. It's quite nice when they do bump into each other because they stop and they kind of build up and slow down, so it kind of creates a stacking effect, but we're going to have them as triggers for now. Okay, so let's check the size of the triggers, which are too small. Ooh, okay, this time 5 by 5 looks okay, and it looks like it's offset strangely. I'm going to reset the transform here. Okay, so now it fits it perfectly. Right, so pressing R, I'm going to scale it down to the size that we want, checking it by putting it over here. That's about the size we want. So now let's duplicate that twice. Rename them to icon 2 and 3. So we have our 3 icons. Switch out the sprites like we did last time. Okay, so let's just move them down so we can see that they're the right ones. And there we have it. The last thing we want to do is we want to add some tags. So let's create 3 tags, icon 01, icon 02 and icon 03, because we're going to use them in the script attached to this object down here. Right, so add tag icon 01, icon 02 icon 03, remembering to actually go back and tag them. Now that they're set up, we can drag them into the prefab folder and delete them from the hierarchy. Okay, now we're going to set up the scripts on the objects. So first of all, we'll go to the icon spawn position, open our script folder and add the spawn icon, change the array size to 3 and plug our 3 icon prefabs in to the slots. Now the parent position, when we create these, we parent them to the canvas. So we want to put the canvas in here, and we'll have a look inside here, see what's going on. So we've got a public game object array which holds our icons, then that's the canvas transform, then we've got a spawn random function and spawn specific enemy functions, and then an empty. Okay, now on the icon arrived position, we want to add the spawn enemy function. Once again, it's an array size of 3. To the prefabs, plug our enemies into here. And the enemy spawn position is our enemy spawn position up here. That's set up. And now on the destroy enemies, we want to add the destroy all script, which literally just destroys anything that collides with it. Okay, so on the prefabs, we want them to move down the screen. So we'll select all of them and we'll put the move script on them. Set the speed to something like 1.5. Let's have a look at the script. It's very simple. We've got a float for the speed. We get the rigid body 2D component and then we change the velocity to negative up. Okay, so that's all set up. Now we need so on the enemy spawn position, we want an animation because we don't want the enemy spawning in a straight line, so we're just going to do an animation for left to right here. So a very simple animation, we'll just call it left right. Hit record here, and let's turn the background on for a second. Back to the enemy spawn, right, hit record here, move it over to the left. Up to about maybe 5 seconds or so. Copy and paste those frames there, go to the middle and move it to the right. Now when the enemies spawn, they should be in a slightly different position every time. Turn off the record. Okay, so next on our icon spawn position, we're going to create another animation. Now, this is the animation we'll use to control when we want to spawn enemies and what type of enemies. So you could have all your enemies along here on the timeline at specific times, and then at the end you could have your boss, and then you could turn the loop, the animation loop off, so when it gets to the end it spawns the boss and that's it. But we're going to have it looping. So now we need to add an event, and now we can access the functions from our script. So first of all, we'll spawn a random enemy, and then after a few seconds we'll add another event, spawn enemy 1, another one, enemy 2, and then enemy 3, and then we'll put an empty function there. Now I'll put the empty there so that when it loops back, these two frames don't spawn directly on top of each other. But you can see how easily it is to plan exactly when you want your enemies to spawn in, and you know, your boss up here or something like that. So okay, should be ready to test it. Let's play up here. Okay, so we have our icons spawning. When they get to here, they spawn up here. Now, one thing I remember, that if these bump into each other, they're probably going to start rotating all strangely and things like that. So I'm going to go back into the prefab folder, select the 3 enemy prefabs, and on the rigid body 2D we're going to go into the constraints and we're going to freeze the rotation on the Z so they don't spin around when they get hit by other enemies. And there you go. Nice simple tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to support us, head over to basegame.co.uk and buy some assets. That'd be muchly appreciated. We've just started out, so anything would help. Okay, so thank you. That's all for us for now. This has been another tutorial from basegame.co.uk. All the best. Goodbye.